All right, friends, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have Victor Wooten, an incredible guest and someone I've always wanted to talk to. Victor is a 5-time Grammy-winning founding member of Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. He's also noted for his solo career, which has also been Grammy nominated. And not only that, he's an author, naturalist, and most importantly, a teacher. Victor has a new book out called The Spirit of Music. It's a sequel to The Music Lesson, and I can't recommend both these books enough. The Music Lesson had a profound impact on my life. It's the only book about music that changed how I listened to music, how I played music, how I conveyed music, how I talked about music, musically and non-musically. Just even to take an excerpt from the book, there's this whole concept of zero, how zero is nothing and something. And that even relates to what we're listening to here. This podcast started from having nothing to do at gigs. So if you're a new listener just hopping on, I play in a band called C Level, letter C dash, and we would, at gigs, I would try to be productive with my time. And I'm always looking for insight and inspiration from people. And we would play with touring bands. So I thought I would do a podcast at the gig, Zig at the Gig. And we would do it in the van, so it'd be quiet. So I'd hang out with someone in my van and we'd talk about life and how we got here. And that got to be a little arduous with like having to run a show and research someone to talk to them. And then it eventually became podcast to promote stuff at a nonprofit art gallery called Negative Space, which it still is to some degree. And then COVID happened, and now it is where it is now. But that all started from nothing, zero. And now we're at 100. This is the 100th episode. It's gone not just from nothing to something, but to a lot of something. And anyone can do that. Anyone can come up with an idea and stick to it and take it down the line from 1 to 100. I also want to take a portion here to thank a friend of mine. His name's Zach Carney. When I was reading the music lesson, he was reading the music lesson. So I had someone to rattle these ideas with and try to figure out who Michael was and like, do you think that really happened? And we tried the whole bit where you put 2 CDs and try to feel which ones are equivalent to Miles Davis. I can't remember, probably Red Hot Chili Peppers. And we were studying with George Hartwig together, which got me on the whole Bruce Lee kick, which is a big portion of these philosophical insights resonated with me because of that. Zach served in the Marines, and now he's living in California with his wife and kid. We did a record with a lot of bass called the Wampus Cats, and I just know I couldn't do anything the music lesson related without giving a shout out and saying I'm proud of you, Zach, and hope you're well, my friend. Get back at me. So here we are, 100 episodes in. This is absurd. Victor's got a lot of stuff going on. He's got so every time he does a book, he does a really amazing audiobook that accompanies it. And it's a production. It's not just like him reading it. It is him reading it, which makes it cool. But also it's him and other voices reading it. And there's music involved. And it's like a radio show, like a radio drama. You're hearing the whole story involved. It's a lot more into it. So if you're an audiobook person, listen to both of them. I've listened to the music lesson numbers. I do it every year, I think. Every other year I'll listen to the music lesson, and every other one I'll read it. There's a lot to unpack in both of them, and they keep coming back. And there's always something you didn't pick up on, just like a good record. This conversation rolls deep, and it's the exact conversation I've always wanted to have with Victor, so it was an honor to have this conversation. Within it, we talk about the Cleveland Cloudwater Zendo, which is a Buddhist temple in Cleveland. And Shifu, the head monk, I would go there with a girlfriend of mine at the time, and we would sit through the meditations, and then afterwards you would talk. And I started to develop a friendship with him, and we would talk about music. And I would talk to a monk about funk, and it was great. And we both found that we had a love for the Flecktones. And he always told me, he's like, I know Victor. Victor would come in here. And so I bring it up in the interview, and Victor didn't remember. I was like, oh no, have I been lied to? by a monk? And that's not the case. So as I'm recording this, I sent Victor the Cloudwater site, and he has recently got back to me that is the guy, and he had it saved in his phone as Cloudwater Zendo. He just didn't remember the name. So it's crazy how small the world is, friends, and it just keeps getting smaller. So with that being said, this is episode 100 with Victor Wooten.
Nothing's off limits with me. You can go wherever you want.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I wanted to start off with, I met you a few years ago in Columbus at a Sam Ash for a clinic. And by that point, I've read the music lesson a few times. And like, it was a book that profoundly impacted, like it finally put like, oh, that's like put like words to a feeling. And when you were talking, like throughout the book, I got this feeling that maybe he's influenced by a particular individual. And then you said it that day. So I was interested, when did Bruce Lee impact your life, and who introduced you to Bruce Lee?
Let's see. I'm the youngest of 5 brothers, so all boys. And so I'm sure it was my brothers that got me into Bruce Lee, but it was in the mid to late 70s when those movies started hitting. Enter the Dragon, of course, big one, but Chinese Connection, and I guess it was called Fist of Fury at the time. All of those movies, we would go to the theater and just watch them over and over. And I think that's what really got me into it. For whatever reason, I was into martial arts as a kid. My dad was in the Korean War, so he learned some judo and karate from that. Would always share it with us. But Bruce Lee came, I think, with Enter the Dragon and the movies before that. We could see that there was something different with this guy. So we bought every magazine, every book, every reel-to-reel film we could find on him. Yeah.
When did you dive into like his philosophies? Was it just kind of vicariously through seeing the films?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you watch the films, his philosophy's all through it.
Right.
When he wouldn't let people make fun of the Chinese, so it was equality, so we could relate to that. Enter the Dragon, they cut out a lot of his philosophy in that movie. I don't know, to make it shorter or whatever, but there's a lot of stuff in there. What he was standing up for, when he slapped the little boy on the head, all this, this deep stuff. But it also came from reading about him. Once we recognized his gift of martial arts, we would buy every book, every magazine he was in, we would buy it. And then his philosophy would just come out. He couldn't talk without using his philosophy. So that really appealed to us brothers.
Right. Because when you see any of those like small interview clips of him, like the Be Water, My Friend, is from a TV show, and it's profound. And I found it interesting. Like he when he wrote Tao of Jeet Kune Do, like when he wrote that, there's this book called I think it's Artists of Life, and it's like a compiling of all his writings, and like a big chunk of it is just rough drafts for Tao of Jeet Kune Do, because he like had it in his mind, but he didn't want to put it out. Like he didn't want to have a way, because that was kind of one of his big philosophies was the way of no way. Yeah. And like reading the music lesson, there was a lot of that in it. And how you approach books like the music lesson and the Spirit of Music is kind of like maybe like a goal he was trying to aim towards, not having like, here's the Bruce Lee way, but here is like a tale that shows these lessons and you can kind of pick up on it. Was that kind of an inspiration towards that?
Totally. I mean, consciously and unconsciously, Bruce Lee inspires everything that I do, because I was into him so young.
Yeah.
And, finding out that he was a philosophy major in college.
Right.
Here in America. And the way he talked about martial arts and kung fu just being like a journey to, I forget how he said it, but a journey into the self, about self-expression. Wasn't about just beating up someone or whatever. It was about finding out who you are, expressing yourself. That was interesting to me, even as a kid. And more so because my brothers were really interested. I did everything that they did. But I knew through this guy, it was more than just punching and kicking. And it was the same. I got a similar thing from reading and studying Aikido. I don't know how you say his name, but Moriai Ushiba, whatever, one of the grand masters, I guess, of Aikido, one of the more well-known people. I would read about him a lot. And his whole thing was about loving your opponent, which was way different from the Taekwondo stuff I had been learning as a kid. It was about love your opponent and not wanting to hurt them, but to blend with them and teach them and things. And Bruce Lee was really coming about it from that angle, in a way, in a sense. But in learning about Wing Chun, which at the time you could only, the best you could do was find a book talking about it.
Right.
But even a book would say you can't learn it from a book. You gotta,
Yes.
And it wasn't until I found a Wing Chun teacher that I realized, oh wow, it's like trying to learn to play bass from a book. You don't really, or learning how to swim from a book, better yet.
Right.
You don't really know if you can swim until you get into the water. And so it was really neat as a kid learning this stuff. But the main thing, finding out Bruce Lee was more into it than just kicking and punching. It allowed me to get into my music more than just playing notes. But his movies, what I did with my books was put it in a fictional form, put it in a story, a novel, like he did with his movies. And that way you can just enjoy the movie. And if you get his philosophy, even better. But if you don't get the philosophy, you still enjoy the movie. So I did books the same way. I didn't, hadn't made any movies yet. But I wrote the stories as fiction. Let's just enjoy the story. But the lessons are there for those who want it.
I didn't even put the connection there of thinking of it like how he did his films. That's excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The same thing. There's a whole lot into those. There's a whole lot of lessons taught in those films.
Yeah.
You mentioned a whole lot of lessons.
You mentioned the one with the pointing the finger at the moon within the new book, and I think that was in Enter the Dragon. I think they kept that in there.
They kept that part in Enter the Dragon. Yeah, and like a finger pointing away to the moon.
Yeah. Was it when I first started playing music? I play guitar. My guitar teacher, he's like, "You got to read this book," and it wasn't Bruce Lee's book, but it was a book by John Little, I think, who ended up being he would edit all the Bruce Lee books that would come out. Yeah. And it was called Way of the Warrior, or The Warrior Within. And it basically took Tao of Jeet Kune Do and put it into a way to apply it to anything, really. And so that was my very first understanding of how to approach goal-oriented things. And this was later in life for me. This was probably in around 15, 17. And the idea of balance and all this really made sense. And then I'm trying to think of the lesson came out in 2008, right?
Yeah, that's okay. That's exactly right. 2008, the music lesson. Yeah, I released a record the same day as the book. That's what it was. Okay,
the audio version of it, or just the music?
No, it wasn't the audio version, but I released a book called, I released a record called Paul Mystery.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it had that song, The Lesson, on it.
Right.
And that's the song that's written in the book, one measure at a time, at the beginning of each measure or chapter of the book. So I was able to coordinate releasing that record and the book at the same time. The audiobook came a couple years later.
Now, with that piece, was that a piece kind of a reflection on the written work, or was it kind of compiled while writing the book?
Well, both. I wrote it for the book. When I came up with the idea of, instead of calling them chapters, calling the chapters measures. I came up with the idea, why not write a song where there's a measure of music at the beginning of each chapter? And so I needed a song that worked. I had to figure out how many chapters I was going to have how many measures it's going to be. And so I just kind of came up with the idea in conjunction with writing. And it just had to also go in line with writing music for a record. And so I was able to have them both come out at the same time. You know, with music, more and more, you need any little trick or any little help you can get to draw attention to new music. There's so much music out there.
Right.
And we all expect it to be free. You know, so what's going to make someone want to buy this record? Well, maybe if you find out this song goes along with this book, you know, whatever help you can get.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's not just as exciting as it was. Like, there has to be another medium to it. And it's kind of like an expiration date on some of this stuff. Like, so much of it, like you were saying, so much of it's coming out. And, like, what makes it stick out?
It's all available.
Right.
I mean, you know, you could write a song and make it available today.
Yeah.
To the whole world. Doesn't mean the whole world will see it, but the whole world has access to it. Where when I was growing up, I was born in 64, the end of 64. You know, to hear music, you had to wait till your favorite artist put out a new record. You couldn't just push a few buttons on a computer. I mean, there weren't computers. So you had to wait, and hopefully your favorite artist would show up that year.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to hear them, you had to listen to the radio all day, waiting for that song. And then they came out with radios and cassette players together. Like, so you'd be waiting. Like, if we had to learn a song for a wedding or for a gig coming up, we'd be waiting for that song on the radio, listening to the DJ, and if we heard that song, you hit record, either on that machine or another machine. And then the DJ would talk through the first 15 seconds of the tune.
Right.
But then you'd finally have a recording of it. Nowadays, you go to YouTube and you get it for free. But the only way we got it for free back then was to wait all day until it played on the radio. And then you go buy the record.
Right. Well, then,
but
yeah.
You might, I got to just say one thing. You might buy the record for one song. But when you bought that album, you listened to the whole record.
Right. You made the commitment. You had to hear it out.
Not anymore. People download the song they want.
It is kind of a shame, like, that the record isn't the thing anymore. And,
right.
like, it's interesting because, like, it's almost kind of in a weird way the inverse of what was before. Like, before, not too many voices can be heard because there wasn't a way to amplify it. Now everything's amplified, but you're hearing too much, and it becomes white noise again, or like it just static.
You're absolutely right. In other words, the people we heard in the past were usually the best static.
Right.
You heard Jimi Hendrix because it was the best. You heard everybody on Motown, or you heard the Rolling Stones, because they were good. Maybe not the best, but they were good. That was the criteria. If you're good, we might sign you. Aretha Franklin wasn't a sex symbol. She wasn't a heartthrob. She was just good. Janis Joplin, Mick Jagger, they were just good. That was the criteria. Now that's not the criteria anymore. It's not about your talent. It's about, can we market you?
Right.
Like if you're sexy, you don't have to be able to sing. We got enough computers here to make you sound good.
Right.
And it was just about marketability. And talent takes, second or third place in order of importance. But it was number one in the beginning. Number one was about talent.
Right.
And then, if you were a good performer, even better. But that wasn't the number one thing.
It's, are you hip to, I think he's a bass player. His name's Adam Neely.
Very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
He put out this thing recently of like him auto-tuning, or it was an auto-tune program where it does subtle adjustments, right? And he does it with like Aretha Franklin and Bill Withers and Led Zeppelin, and like he slightly puts them on key, and he takes all these bluesier songs, and it just makes this weird feel that isn't that song. And
sure.
It's interesting, like that so much of it, like so much of everything now has to be perfect. that it kind of takes out.
It doesn't have to be.
Right.
But that is the norm nowadays.
Right.
And I have my thoughts about that, but it is the norm. But that's like, for me, walking into a person's house that's too clean.
Right.
When I was a kid, there were some people whose houses and their grandmas would put plastic over the kitchen table. The good dishes were in a cabinet. You got to take your shoes off. You can't, it's like you're in the house like this.
Yeah.
And for me, there's less feel, there's less soul when music feels like that. It's the stuff about music that makes you go, ooh, yeah, and feel it, is the stuff that's technically wrong.
Right.
It's when it's out of tune a little bit. It's when we're in the key of C major, but maybe you played a C sharp or E flat. Those wrong notes, It's when James Brown would have the guitar player playing the dominant 7, but the horn player's playing the major 7 at the same time. Gospel does it too.
Yeah.
It's those things that make you feel things, right? It's just like in life, when things go right, they're good, but we spend our time talking about the things that went wrong.
Right.
So there has to be that mixture. And when you correct everything and it's just all right and perfect, every rhythm's perfect, every pitch is perfect, there's no dynamics because it's all compressed. We've taken the dynamics out of it. We've taken the yin yang out of it, the opposites that make me like this because this exists also, right? We take all of that out. It's good, but it doesn't stick with us because we hear it and like it, but it doesn't stick with what we feel.
Right.
Right? If you get in a car accident, you're going to feel that for a long time, especially if you live through it.
Yeah.
Because then life takes on a more special meaning. All right, but when music is just all perfect, it's more one-dimensional to me.
That's beautifully said. And to kind of go back to the house metaphor, when you're in that house, it's not comforting. You're afraid to ruin someone's well-maintained household.
Exactly.
Is that kind of where the idea of the phasers spawned from in the new book?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot in both books that use that. That's why Michael always keeps you questioning instead of just telling you the answer.
Yeah.
He gives you another question to make you grind, make you search, make you, instead of just making it easy. Michael knows every answer that you ask. He could just tell you, but if he just tells you the answer, you may forget it. But if you search for it and find it yourself, because of the feeling and the stories of searching and the energy that it takes to find that answer, you're going to remember. And so, and plus, with Michael asking more questions, you're going to learn more than what your question was.
Right.
So, Michael's creating a journey, not just a destination. Usually, an answer is the end.
Yeah.
What's the name of that tree? Or what tree? Well, that one over there. What do you mean over there? What direction is that? I don't know. Well, where's the sunset? The sunset's in the west. And then what direction is that tree? Oh, that tree's in the east. Okay, now what tree? That tree over there. What? Just tell me which tree. I see a lot of trees over there. Well, the one with the different color bark. What kind of bark you talking about? All the bark's different. By the time you get the answer, oh, that's a sycamore. You done learn all this stuff. We talked about direction and all that stuff. So that's what Michael is doing. That's what some people call it the Socratic method.
Right.
I really realized it when I started studying nature. And I was learning from a teacher named Tom Brown Jr. And he and all of his teachers used this method. It was one of the things they used that I attributed to Michael. And they called it coyote or coyote teaching. Coyote, they call the trickster. And so they're tricking you into learning more than you asked for. And that's what Michael's doing. But Michael understands that if life is about duality. That's why I like the yin yang symbol. You don't know who you are unless who you aren't shows up. Right? There's no up without down, no right without left. I'm not black unless there's a white person. Right? I can't be good unless there's bad people. I can't be a genius unless there's people that's not geniuses. I can't discover cancer unless there's people with cancer. So everything stays in balance. Keeps all sides keep things in balance. And most of us are trying our best to remove that. But you can't have choices. As human beings, we have choice. But you can't have choice unless there's something to choose from.
Right.
So, trying to get rid of everything that's bad, I don't know if that's possible on Earth.
Right.
Right? Because at that point, you have no choices. Right? But you can choose how you see that bad stuff. You can see the purpose in it. And after that, and once you do that, you realize it's not really that bad. It's just not my choice.
Right. But you can't do that without it. It has to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And after a while, the stuff you disagree with it's the same as, like, I don't like tomatoes.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean tomatoes are bad. It's just not my taste. Might be yours. So I'm not going to throw out every tomato in the world.
Right.
Right. And I look at things like that more now. That maybe things need to be shifted a little bit, but we don't need to get rid of it.
Exactly.
So I see music that way. But instead of writing a music method book as rules and lessons, the Wooten method or whatever, I didn't want any of that. So I just wrote a story.
I think one that's beautiful, because so much of stuff now is like, if you don't agree with it, throw it away, hide it, stop them from talking, or shut them down. Don't, you know what I mean? But that, you can't lead by example of doing the right thing if there is no wrong, if everyone's doing the same thing. And like, I think that's and it's something that's very hard to, like, not think about now. And like, it's something that's very hard to not, like, it's just, even when you stand up for someone to say the wrong thing, some people put you in the wrong sometimes, which doesn't help out either, because you gotta learn. You gotta learn from somebody, and usually that's by making mistakes. And it puts such a bad connotation on that, even when you don't let anyone else make mistakes. So I think that's well said. And there's a danger. There can be a danger into thinking that you're right and everyone else is wrong. Definitely. Right. Like I'll be 57 next month. Right. 57. So that's nowadays considered kind of old or whatever. But the thing is, life has been going on a whole lot longer than my 57 years. So who am I to say what's right? And I'm only 57. And more so, who am I to say you're wrong? Right. I'm right and you're wrong. And there's a danger in that. Because, of course, everybody thinks they're right. And we like to get on social media and tell everybody else that I'm right and you're wrong. But there is a place for all of it. You tell me anything that you think is wrong, and I'll show you where there's a place where you won't say it's wrong. There's a place for everything, or else it wouldn't be allowed. Life wouldn't allow it to exist if there wasn't a place for it. In many cases, the place for it is just to show you who you are, that you have a choice, right? If you don't like this that's happening over there, then bless it for showing you how not to be. Beautiful. And then it allows you to be worthy of trying to fix it. Yeah. Change. That house is burning. You get to be the hero. Put the fire out. Rescue the people who are in there, that kind of thing. It allows us to rise to the top because there is a bottom. Right. Definitely. And that has to be. That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah. I don't know what it's like, Dave. I don't know what it's like off of Earth. But on Earth is about duality. Right? We can't understand Earth except in linear fashion, before, now, and future. We have to live in that way. And so before, now, and future is good, middle, bad. Same thing. For life as humans to exist, we have to have that duality, or that trio, actually, because the two sides create the middle. So we can't understand life except within that. That's why even people who believe God and think that God is almighty, they still make God equal with the devil. Right. Or they make the devil equal to God. But those same people will tell you that God created the devil. Then how is the devil equal? But we can't understand one without the other. And that's just a human experience. And it's reminiscent of you have an excerpt in the Spirit of Music about paying attention, and I thought that was so well done. That whole bit in there about you pay energy into the time now, and
Right.
and then it pays off to something like when you're having fun and time escapes you. Is
Right.
that as far as like being in the now and like having a practice like that? Do you meditate?
Well, I'll put it this way. I have meditated a lot.
Okay.
But to me, if meditation is so wonderful, why should I have to go somewhere to do it? And I don't mean physically go somewhere, but go into a mindset. Wouldn't it be better to be able to just live that way?
Yeah.
Or to not have to sit cross my legs in lotus and om? Why can't I just say, okay, I'm meditating now?
Right. Right.
And that's my goal. So now what I've learned to do basically is take that meditative state and call upon it whenever. Whenever. But at the same time, it's not a place I always want to be.
True.
It's not. Right? There's sometimes I want to get out of that state and be a full human and experience, rather than that peaceful floating on air. Sometimes I want my feet on the ground and be human. But I do want to call on that place when I need it. And I've learned how to do it. I'm sure, I'm not a yogi. I'm not the kind of person who, can maybe meditate at the deepest levels of the yogis who live that way. I don't claim to be any of that. But when I need that peaceful mindset, I know it's there. I don't have to sit down, cross my legs or whatever. And you go to sleep every night. That's meditative state. Your conscious is out the way.
Right.
It's on its own. It's the subconscious that takes over then. So in a sense, you do it every night.
Yeah. Do you know of the Cleveland Cloudwater Zendo?
No.
Okay. It's a Buddhist sanctuary in Cleveland, and there's this guy who runs it. I think he goes by Shifu or I can't. It's been years since I've been there, but I went there with an ex-girlfriend. She was very adamant about getting into that mindset, and like they would spend hours there, and I would sit there for a little bit and be like, I'm at that piece where I need to be. I'm good to go. I kind of want to do something. And she would get all mad because I would get all fidgety. And I was talking with the guy who ran the place, or the I can't think of the right term, but the guy who was running the meditation, and he was a Buddhist monk. He went through the whole thing, was wearing the robes, and I started to talk to him about music. And I started to talk to this monk about funk. And that for that year, I got to tell the story. Oh, I was talking to this monk about funk. And he was telling me that he met you at one point or something, or that you stopped there at one point, which is why I bring that up. And I was like, no way. That's so cool. That kind of makes sense.
I know a Buddhist monk in Cleveland. And when you said, I'm wondering if it's the same guy.
It could, I don't know,
because I knew him probably close to 15, 20 years ago. We used to keep in touch.
Okay.
And so he may have gone on. He may have changed his name. He may have started his own thing.
Did he play music at all somehow?
He would come to my concert, so maybe he did. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's the same guy because I think he played trumpet or saxophone. I never got his real name. They just called him Shifu. So and he had the Cloudwater Zendo, and we talked about. I think he hit it off with your sax player at one show. I can't remember the specifics. I'm really blanking on it. And he was like, "Oh yeah, Victor came here." I'm like, "That's crazy," and it made me reflect upon there's certain meditative bits you put in, or kind of approaches in the lesson, like the focus on the tingle and move it around, and it's all it's all kind of really relative to where we started with the Bruce Lee bit of don't think, do, and you have the whole philosophy of trying easy, and it's I thought that was a beautiful way to put it, because it's not It should be. You just try easy, and then like the idea of focusing on a tingle and finding that spot and being, not having to dedicate your whole entire life to trying to find that inner peace, but do it and then live everything else. Is that's. But oh man, well I hope it's the same guy, because if not, I believe that.
Man, that'd be so nice. You got me thinking. Now I wrote it down. Cleveland, Cloudwater, Zendo.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up.
All right, you have to let me know, because if not, I've been telling that story for a long time.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, there was a guy, probably still a guy in Cleveland that I used to be in touch with quite a bit. He was a Buddhist monk. He he had a regular, real American name. He's not from India or anything.
Right.
So But he went by a different name, which I can't recall at the moment.
Okay.
I have to remember who he was. I look at my phone book, see if I still have him. But that would be nice if it's the same guy. I'd love to get back in touch with him.
Cool. Well, maybe we can make that happen. That's awesome.
But Dave, there's a really good saying that, and I can't remember it, that really captures it for me. And I can't remember, but there's a couple. One had to do with enlightenment. Well, they both kind of did. But it said something about, like, the goal is not to be able to walk on water, but something with your feet on the ground, you know?
Okay.
That, and then the other one was like, it's not to be able to be in so much of a peaceful state that there's no trauma or whatever, but to be in that traumatic state and find your peace. And I wish I got to find these quotes, because to me, that's what nails it. Because a lot of us are trying to ignore the human experience.
Right.
To find some other place. But that, in my mind, we're human. And on Earth, it's about this duality. Right? Earth is a physical place. We're spiritual beings, I believe. But I believe at some place we make that choice to come to Earth and live this physical life. Life is about things that move. It's about energy. Everything vibrates. Everything on Earth has a vibration. That's energy. That's life. That's physical. So yes, we're spiritual beings. We have a non-physical part. But on Earth, everything vibrates. Everything is physical. So why try to bypass that physical? Don't worry, you're going to get there. Right? You're going to die. You're going to leave your physical body. You're going to leave it. Nobody wants that to happen too soon.
Right.
Right? Nobody. So we're trying to be this thing that we aren't, and we really don't want it. We want to be physical. Who wants to give up their body? We want to be able to escape it at times, but you sleep every night. You do escape. The thing is to be able to find that peaceful place within the midst of the human experience.
Right.
And to me, that's what makes the human experience better. That's what's going to solve issues, problem, is finding that peace, recognizing it in your fellow man and women, in your brother and sister, recognizing that place inside of them rather than having to find it somewhere else.
That's well said. It's like it makes me think of the kind of the bounce off the quotes you used as the Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee has one that not to have the strength to get through I'm going to say it backwards, to have the strength to get through a rough life, not to have an easy life. I'm mixing it all up right now.
That's it. Yeah. Man, there's some websites. You just go online and look up Bruce Lee quotes.
Yeah.
Take you to a website of some of the most amazing quotes. Just amazing. He's an amazing man.
That was like the first. So those first couple books I mentioned, I couldn't find them. Like I wasn't. I grew up with a time with no internet, and then we had it, and like it was. So I would always go look for the physical thing, and I ended up finding this book that was basically all bits, all one-liners. It was just a book of just one-liners from Bruce. And it's interesting because it covers so much, and like just how he thought about words, and like, and you do the same thing with your work, like just being able to take apart a phrase or pull apart a word like parents, and like I find that so fascinating. What brings about are these conversations you have? Are these like bits from your brothers? Are these bits from like how do you not?
Well, it started with my parents, because my parents were in a sense religious. I guess you would probably call them religious, but not like a lot of religious people. In other words, they were religious with their feet on the ground. They read the Bible, they knew what was in it, but they knew that the Bible was kind of outdated. The lessons are still current, but we don't walk around like they did at that time, But they talked a lot about the word. My parents were very aware of the words we speak, and they wanted us to be honest, and we had to know what we were saying. We didn't just say things because it fit the topic of the day or it fit the situation. We all said things that we believed and we thought to be right. Very aware of the word, the vibrations that were coming out of our mouth, because they're coming from within. So we want to be very aware of that. So it started way back then, but my brothers really turned me on to the idea of looking at words for deeper meanings. For example, I named two of records that I had out. One was the instrumental record was called Sword and Stone. And a lot of us have heard about the fable with King Arthur and Merlin and all of that. But if you take Sword and Stone and take the letter S off of each word and put it at the end, you get words and tones.
Okay.
And so I had an instrumental record called Sword and Stone, but I had the exact same record with there were 14 tracks. Some of them were small tracks, but 9 of the 14 tracks on words and tones had vocals. The same songs, but vocal versions. The Sword and Stone record was an instrumental version, and 9 of the 14 tracks were the same. But my brother, more than that, my brothers I just like the concept, because my brothers, they say there's hidden meanings in words. And that just about any time there's a letter S, that's the letter S is a symbol of a waveform or a vibration. So when you see those letter S's in those words, you look at them, and they looked at that whole fable with King Arthur. That's why I put it in the book. They looked at that whole fable. Basically, the story of the sword and the stone is there is a sword stuck in a big rock. And somebody knew whoever could remove that sword from the stone would be the new king. And all the strong men would try. No one can do it. And it wasn't until this little kid named Arthur came and pulled it right out, and they heralded him as the new king. And so my brothers is like, what does that really mean? Why is that such a famous story? What's it trying to really say? Maybe it's saying have the pure heart of a kid.
Right.
But when they looked at it more like words and tones, who can pull the meaning, right? Who can pull the tones, which are vibrations, out of the words, the meaning out of the words? Sword and stone are words and tones. Who can pull the tones? Instead of pulling the sword from the stone, pulling the tone from the words.
Okay.
Right? And they looked at it, and so they started re-looking at that whole fable. And all of a sudden, King Arthur is art. So art is king.
Yeah.
Merlin is a magician, or he's a musician. He was the court jester type of guy that the kings always had. These, jugglers and musicians and people around. That's who Merlin was. Merlin, the magician, or the musician. Right. So, and they can go through that whole story and show you a whole nother meaning to it. And it's like, whoa, okay, maybe so.
Okay. So
yeah, that idea came from my brother. So I started looking at a lot of different words.
Right. Do you remember how old you were when they presented that to you like that?
I mean, it started really young, but the Sword and Stone was in the 2000s when I remember them talking about that, and that was why I named my record that.
Okay.
But they would look at all different types of words, and it started really by looking at the Bible, because when you look at the like the Christian Bible, or probably any Bible, again, they have to write it in a way that we understand it today. They weren't using those words whatever thousands of years ago when this stuff supposedly happened. So someone had to translate it. So when they talked about in the Christian Bible, it says God, he spoke the earth or the universe. It was the word, right? A word is a vibration.
Okay.
Right? And a vibration is it could be a tone, it could be music. Even science today, they say they're finding a tone, an actual pitch that's roaming through space and might be holding all the planets in order. Right? The same way gravity is a vibration that holds us. Well, every planet that's spinning creates a vibration, gravity. You speed that or slow down that vibration, it's going to create a tone. Right. All vibrations are the same thing at different rates. Right? If it beats at 440 times in a second, it'll produce the note A.
Right.
But slow that down, like 440, 220, 110, 55, 27 and a half. You keep going down. Now you're going to hear this.
Right.
Now we need a metronome. You keep going down, you're going to hear something else. You keep going up, you're going to see colors, you're going to see light. Then it's going to be infrared. Then it's going to be, but it's still just vibrations.
It is fascinating. It's
It's really fascinating. Yeah. And so words are vibrations.
Right.
Words have pitch. They have everything. They're just vibrations. So words, when they talk about in the scriptures where God spoke everything into existence, or first was the word and all of that kind of stuff, my brothers, because of course they probably weren't using the word way back then.
Yeah.
So why word now? Is there another meaning where it spawned from? And that's what my brothers look at.
That's beautiful. What a way to...
Spirit, spiral, spiritual, the spirit, ritual of the spirit, the ritual of the spiral. Spiral is like a bass clef that looks like this.
Right.
Look at it this way, it's doing this. So we're talking about spirals.
Okay.
Right.
That's fast. It's beautiful how much can be hidden within that, or not hidden within that, but plainly seen. It's just how you see it.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, man.
Exactly.
That's going to open that door forever when you start thinking of it like that. But yeah, I found that fascinating through both your books, just how the ability to take a word like the idea of a parent, like, and I keep going back to that, but even like coincidence, when that whole spiel with that, and like that kind of goes into the whole vibration thing, and like the A320 or 3.
432.
432.
Sure.
And like just how that adds up, and how all that math is so fascinating. Is that the same type of train of thought that kind of dove into this?
Yeah, the 432 thing came from my brothers also. A lot of the stuff comes from my brothers. And 432 has become very popular. If you look up scientific tuning,
right,
it's become pretty popular, and a lot of musicians are starting to experiment with tuning their instruments to 432 instead of 440. And I'm not here to say that either is better or worse. Right. I am here to say that 432 lines up with at least Western measurements of life.
Right.
When you take those numbers and you look at Fibonacci and pi and all that stuff, 432 lines up more. So, like for example, at 432, the note C would be at 256. 432 is an A, like 440 is an A, just a little bit sharper than 432. The note C at 432 goes to 256. So you take 256 and you think about how many gigs you have in your computer. or your cell phone, it's going to add up to 256. It's going to be a relative of that number. In other words, 1 plus, I think it's called like base 2 or something. There's a name for it in math. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. 8, 16. I can remember when there was 16 gigs, 32 gigs, not 33. You'll never get a 33 gig chip. It'll be 32. Then 64, 128, 256.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And so on, and so on. So this tuning at 432 lines up to how we measure the earth. Right, and I put a lot in the book. You go on Google and it says our heart beats an average of 72 beats per minute. You add that up by 60 minutes make an hour, 12 hours, 24 hours. It comes down to 864,000 seconds or heartbeats in a day or whatever. Something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers, but 864 is 432 doubled. It comes back 20. Now we're talking 24 hours in a day. You add those up, it'll come out to 432 or 864. You multiply 432 times 432, you get the speed of light. Right? 432 times maybe half or whatever is maybe, I can't remember, but you'll get 1,028 or whatever, which is the diameter of the moon, or how many miles to the moon. All these numbers keep showing up. So there's something to it that interests me and interests my brothers about how these numbers at this ratio keep showing up. Whether it makes your music better or not, I don't know.
It's definitely fascinating to think about.
Very fascinating.
Do you notice when you play with that tuning? Do you notice some alignments like that? Or
me personally, I haven't experimented with it enough to really know. I do know I have some friends. There was a band that used to be called the Aquarium Rescue Unit. Okay. Colonel Bruce Hampton was the leader. Colonel Bruce Hampton and Aquarium Rescue Unit. Sadly, Colonel Bruce has passed away a few years ago. But a childhood friend of mine, Otil Burbridge, is bass player for that band. And we knew that band very, very well. But they always played at 432.
Interesting.
Colonel Bruce was into that kind of stuff. I have talked to a lot of people, not a lot of people, a few people who have played with it. This one great guitarist, classical guitarist named Muriel Anderson. She does a lot of things for us at our camps in Tennessee. She heard my brothers talking about 432. So she went home and tuned one of her guitars to 432, and she said that thing just came to life in a way. So I urge people to experiment with it, but you decide what works for you. I don't do it because I'd be out of tune with everybody else I play with.
Right.
So I tune to 440 because that's the standard.
Right.
Right.
It'd be I wonder if would you have to adjust the fret length? Like would 432 become more standard if frets were placed in a different way, like on a guitar, or like if the ratio of the piano was kind of set differently? Like it
right.
Have to be something like that.
Things would change, not in a huge way where everybody would hear it.
Right.
If you tuned your bass down a little bit, you may have to adjust the saddle in your bridge to make sure every fret was still in tune, because the string, you have to adjust the length of the string. But I don't think many people would be able to hear the out of tuneness that could be caused because the frets are put in a place for 440.
Right.
But I've heard a lot of opera singers and violinists talk about, these Stradivariuses weren't made to be tuned up this high.
Oh, interesting.
These operas weren't made for our voices to be this high. I've heard about that. Yeah, so I don't know. It's not something I know a whole lot about. It's more fun to talk about.
Yeah. I wonder, I think also our brains would, even if it was that slight, minuscule thing off that ratio a little bit, I bet our brains would kind of hear what it meant to be. Like how pianos have 3 strings. They're all slightly out of tune, but our brain picks up on the harmonies that, harmonics that equal the right note.
So that to me, Dave, that's the real thing. Not so much what does it sound like. Can I hear the difference? But can you feel it? Because your body knows. Your body knows. I think your body would know the difference. Here's the thing. When I was a kid, we didn't have digital radios. Right? Radio stations now are digital. You type in the number and it's right there. We used to have a dial. And we'd have to turn the dial to the station. So it used to be, once you start turning the dial and it got close to the station, you could hear the music start to come in, but they're a little bit static. Oh, okay. As you got closer to the station, a little bit more static. But once you got right on the station, boom, it was like, whoa. It's like the music became stereo and 3D and everything. So it could be that we're really close to the station at 440.
Okay.
But at fourth, and it sounds great. Sounds great. It's like watching color TV. Maybe the colors are a little off and you don't mind. There's nothing wrong with black and white. Black and white is nostalgic. Some of my favorite photos of my parents are in black and white. Who's to say that's wrong? So not being in complete color, I don't know that there's anything wrong with that. But I think being able to adjust, having both, I can see black and white, I can see color. You know, but how do I know that this TV that I'm looking at you on is the colors are totally right? I don't know. So I look at 432, 440 that way. More so, are you making good music? Are you putting your heart into it? Are you doing something that's really you? Because when you talk to me, I don't know whether it's 440, 450. I don't know. I'm really paying attention to what you say. And if you say it with your heart, I don't know that it matters what pitch you say it in. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't.
Well said. Another kind of concept off of the same train, and maybe even the same segment of the book, was you talk about there's 12 tones, right? 12 months of the year, 7 days in a week, and then 2 of those days are the weekend, kind of breaking down the scale into whole steps and half steps. I kind of went down the train of thought of thinking like, well, if you fill in the whole steps and half steps, like if you went from Sunday to Monday, a whole step, Monday to Tuesday, whole step, Monday or Tuesday to Wednesday, half step, and like so on, and it's almost like that kind of rest is put in there in a way. Like I find Wednesdays I'm like exhausted. I don't know if that's the same, but it's just kind of like diving into that concept a little more. Like I don't know if you have you ever thought of it kind of like that or.
Yeah, I have. And I'm really just hoping people will think a little bit the way you are with these books. I'm not trying to tell people this is the way it is.
Right.
Just give you things to think about. Yeah, but when you really relate the days of the week to the days of a scale. 5 days, Monday through Friday is like a 5-note pentatonic scale.
Right.
It could be that too.
Yeah.
And the 2 days on the weekend are the 2 half steps. You can look at it and you can start to find some relationships. It's kind of fun stuff to look at.
I still think Wednesday is the flatted fifth if we make it the blues scale. So it's still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Daniel Levitin. You said he helped you develop that scale at the beginning of the book when you size music from a live experience to a MP3.
Yeah.
How do you know him? And have you worked on any other projects with him?
I have. I met him. A lot of us musicians first found out about him when he wrote that book, This Is Your Brain on Music.
Right. It's a great book.
Because Dan is a good musician. But it was that book that brought our attention to him. And then he called me to come, because I had done the music lesson, he called me to come speak with him at 92nd Street Y in New York, which is a pretty prestigious conversation place. And we did a talk and we played music together in front of an audience, and we just hit it off, and we've been kept in touch. We've been close friends ever since then. But he's really interested in this kind of thing, but he's a scientist.
Right.
So he likes the science behind it. And, like for me, if pizza tastes good, I don't need to know how you cooked it. I don't need to know any science. I just want another one, But some people need to know what temperature you make the dough, what all that stuff. And I'm glad there's people that's like that. so that they can totally reproduce that piece. I want another slice for me. So I like Dan because we can meet on different sides of these things. Like for example, I can talk about the feeling, and he can talk about the science behind that feeling, and even maybe why you feel it. So I learn a lot from him. I think we learn a lot from each other. Yeah.
That's cool.
But that's how it came together. Years ago, he called me. I had read his book, he had read mine, and we got together to have a conversation, our first conversation, and it was in public.
What brought up that scale that he came up with, or that you guys came up with by like kind of sizing music down to the...
Well, I just told him what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And I started by saying, well, if listening to live music is 12 inches, a foot, because that's a standard, everyone can imagine what that looks like. What would vinyl be? And we just came up with, let's say 8 inches.
Okay.
It's not live, but it's the closest thing that we have to get to it. To record wise, 2-inch tape, vinyl, analog. And then we looked at a waveform being maybe 6 inches. But the kicker was, he told me that MP3, he told me is about 1/10 the size of a waveform. And waveform is what we usually make CDs out of. So if a MP3, which is a lot of time what we're downloading from iTunes or what's in our phones that we're listening to, we're usually listening to MP3s. And he said that an MP3 is usually about 1/10 the size of a waveform. So if my waveform was 6 inches, that puts a MP3 at 1/2 inch, 0.6 inches. And think about it, that's the norm today.
Right.
That's the norm, is a waveform. So it doesn't, and as this one guy also talked about, it came up with Sonoma, Gus. I talk about Gus. He helped invent digital recording. I got digital recorders right here. He helped invent it, but doesn't really like it.
Huh.
Because he said we stopped working on it too soon. So he kept working on digital because he saw the benefit of digital. But the mainstream digital processors will record 192,000 pieces of information in a second. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But it's still not what the brain can perceive. So this guy Gus came up with a new system, his own system that's digital, but it records up to 3 million, or not quite 3 million, close to 3 million bits per second, pieces per second. And when you hear it at his studio or anywhere, you hear it, you go, whoa, whoa. I mean, I was brought to tears. I was fighting back tears when I first heard it in his studio, because I was thinking, man, I'm a celebrated musician. I get awards for making music, but even I forgot it's supposed to sound like this. And the average person, everybody, you can hear the difference, but the average person won't care, probably.
Right.
But what you feel, whoa, your body and your ears know. No. So Dan, helped me come up with this ratio to get people to show right away what's happening in a quickly. I'm alive when CDs came out. I can remember getting the first CD player from a record company. It was a gift. We got a CD player, right? CDs were supposed to be indestructible. Supposedly you could play frisbee with. Nothing could destroy them. We found out quickly it wasn't true.
Yeah.
But there was something different about the CD. They sound good still, but there's something not quite the same. Right? Even hearing your mom speak on the telephone or hearing it on a CD is different. Hearing her in the same room is way different. So I wanted people to see that in the new book, The Spirit of Music, right away, what has happened in a few short decades, going from live to vinyl down to 1/2 inch. Then you put that 1/2 inch through some headphones or computer speakers. Where are we now? Maybe 1/4 inch? And that's the norm. And but what I see happening, and I don't know that I can blame it on that, But I see that music is devalued. We expect it to be free. I heard someone say once that when we were kids, television was free, but we paid for music. And now music is free, but we pay for television. Totally backwards. And you see what we value. People don't buy whole records anymore. And I'm speaking generally. I know some people do. But most people buy the song they want. They'll listen to 15-second on YouTube or whatever, the preview on iTunes, and then buy the songs that they want or the songs that they heard. They don't buy the whole record. We buy the songs we want. We listen to them whatever order we want. So we rarely ever get the artist's true vision. Where back then, every song was in an order on a record for a reason. The album cover painted a whole visual picture of the record, front and back. If it was a double record, even better, because you could open it up. We read everything. Then we'd pass it over, and they would read everything. But we sat and listened to the whole record. Yeah, we had our favorite songs, but we listened to the whole thing. Not just once, over and over. And that's how we learn. That's how we learn to play music. We listen and we jam.
Yeah. It's interesting that all this comes from vibration, and the end all thing is it moves you. Like when you got to hear that music and that with that quality and that clarity, it moved you to tears. It physically, a thing that is just moving moves us. Right. And it's interesting kind of to tie it to the beginning of where we started talking about, like tying it to like the idea of music being less valued. Well, maybe it's less valued because it's less of it's moving, like, and less of it can move you because there's less to get through the speakers in our ears, like, or the little earbuds, compared to like being in a room with a band. Seeing someone play that song is completely different than the condensed file that you can carry 1 million of them for. So it's an interesting, like, maybe it's how it's being fed to us also kind of devalues it. Or maybe
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. To me, it's the same as the fact that I can go out and buy a 2-liter bottle of Coca-Cola cheaper than I can buy an 8-ounce bottle of water. Okay? That's normal also. The fact that we buy water, period, is crazy, but it's normal. It's the norm. Hey, will you buy me a bottle of water? There's water in the sink. There's water everywhere. We should be able to drink it. Why can't we? As smart as we are, we can't drink water, and we're not doing anything to fix that. We'd rather just sell it. Right? But water's so good for you, let's make it expensive. Let's make the stuff that's bad for you easier to get and cheaper. Why is it easier and cheaper to get fast food than slow food, when slow food is better for you?
Right.
Shouldn't it? I mean, it really just doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless it's money driven.
Right.
Unless it's money driven. And, you know, I won't even go into all of that. But my point here and with this book is that it's decisions somebody is making. You don't have to be smart to realize that water should be cheaper than a cola. Right? You don't have to be a scientist to figure that out. You don't have to be smart to realize that we shouldn't have to pay for water when the planet, what do they say, 70% water?
Right.
Now we got to buy it. You don't have to be smart to figure that out. So someone's making decisions. So I'm talking about all of that when I'm talking about music. I just call it music because people will still listen. There's no political decisions or agenda if we're talking about music.
Right.
If I start talking about vaccines, racism, politics comes up. Music is still safe from that so far.
Right.
So I can talk about everything: equality, inequality, racism, sexism, health and call it music and still express my views. So that's what I'm doing.
It's beautiful. And I think so much of, like, when it comes to all those topics before, it'd be politics and religion or whatever it may be, I feel like both of those are so, you kind of pick you subscribe to a flavor, and that's the only flavor you can drink, or a rhetoric, and that's the only thing you can repeat, and anyone that doesn't agree with or alters the flavor a little bit is wrong. And like, but it doesn't really allow you to be you. You're just kind of being this group of a thing. And because I've gotten to the point, and I'm sure you've gotten to the point, and a lot of people have gotten to the point where politics is not, it's not really, I'm not hearing who you are. I'm hearing the group of people you want to be around, or I'm hearing their opinions through you, which is, it's a shame, because I want to know what you think. And like, but I guess that goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier too, where if you can't be wrong, how can I really know you? Because you can't be wrong. You have to be right, at least in what you perceive to be right. And
right.
That's a shame.
That's right, Dave. That's really nice. Nice. Absolutely right. Yeah, but the cool thing about music is you're still alive. I'm sorry. You're still allowed to like punk rock.
Yeah.
And polka.
Yeah.
Right? I don't criticize you for that. But so in other words, in music, you don't have to prescribe to only one style.
Right.
We're allowed to be free. Well, what kind of music do you play, man? I play all of it. It's all same notes. I like all music. Well, who do you pray to? Oh, well, I pray to Allah. I pray to Jesus. I pray to... No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
All right, well, what political, are you Democrat? Are you, well, I like them all. No, you can't do that. Music is still safe so far. It's changing. Right? It's changing. But I found that I can talk about all of it if I call it music.
I think it's because everyone's going to be moved by it. It's interesting. Like, I had a wedding gig the other day, and the guy was like, and it was at this facility that I've played before. I'm like, I was here for the mayor thing, talking to the guy about how, like, the sound system should be set up. And he's like, oh, the Democratic thing in Parma. He's like, yeah, I'm Republican, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, sorry if you're, well, whatever, but, And I'm like, I'm a musician, so where do I plug in? Like, it just, I feel like that even, like, right there, the guy was still a nice guy. But, like, he was trying to I don't know. It was just a weird angle of it. None of that really mattered for this couple's wedding. Like, it's their night.
Exactly. Well, those views, those sentiments are so prevalent right now.
Right.
Politics. Really, politics right now is speaking the loudest right now, and so everything is kind of being seen through political eyes.
Yeah.
Whether it's vaccinations, whether it's racism, to a lot of people of color, man, the American flag, as of late, has taken on a whole nother meaning.
Right.
You might as well be flying a Confederate flag or a KKK flag when you see the American flag these days, and that's sad.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, that's what America was built upon.
Right.
Let's kill this race of people. Let's hijack this or another race to build it for us, and so that us, white people can be happy. That's sad to say, but it's real. That's what happened. You can't argue that. You can argue, but you're wrong. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Right? And so you got races of people that are still trying to fight for that equality. But if you fight, people say, well, be peaceful. If you be peaceful and kneel for the flag, they say, oh, you're wrong. There's nothing you can do. But all of a sudden, this is going to sound mean, and I don't mean it this way, but now all of a sudden you get a pandemic and a virus. Don't care what color you are.
Right.
They don't care who you voted for. All of a sudden, it's affecting everybody. All of a sudden, the people who were always in charge of politics are starting to lose.
Yeah.
And can't you see them panicking? Panicking so much that they'll storm the Capitol? they're doing the same things that they condemned people for doing back in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
Rioting, racing. The same flag they're mad at me for kneeling at, they're using that same flag to stab people in the Capitol. Panicking. So it could be that there's about to be real change because the people that need to make the change are getting affected.
Right.
Before, it only affected the gays. It only affected the black people. It only affected the Mexicans. We could sit pretty, but not anymore. Now everything's getting threatened.
Right.
So it might be a time for some real change.
One can hope.
And I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Right.
Yeah. People your age, the younger generation, y'all ain't standing for this nonsense. Right? What? You mean just because I'm gay, I can't have these? What? Just because I'm women, I got to make less than, what? Just because I'm black means I can't enter, what? The younger people ain't attached to that thought. They're like, no way, we got to change this stuff, and I'm loving it.
Definitely. That's what we got to hope for, is something, well, and it seems like full circle too, right? With how you described it. Now it's going full circle, so there has to be something. There has to be some type of change. Yeah,
well, it's not full circle because it depends on what we're talking about. Because there's people that in this country that have never had the rights.
Right.
So it can't be full circle yet. If that's what we're talking about. So I don't know if that's what we mean by that. But it does seem like we may be reaching the place to where some real change is, where we can become the America that really is for all people.
Right.
Not just words, not just in the Constitution, one for all. But even when they wrote that, a black person was only worth 1/5 of a man.
Right.
So we weren't talking about them. But maybe we really can become the country that stands for what we say we do.
Right.
And can reconcile and admit that we were founded on lies. Okay, the country lied to the Native Americans, right? How do you discover a country, they say? How do you discover a country when there's people already there? Right? The American way was, hey, let's kill them. That's how we do it, right? And that's what happened. And then, Africans got brought over against their will to actually build and do the work and get experimented on. A lot of vaccines and things we have is because people were experimented upon. That's not in the history books.
Right.
There's a whole lot of stuff. But we have the opportunity because of it. We're a new country. Right? We're not France. We're not Europe. We're a few hundred years. This is a new country. We still have the opportunity to get it right.
Right.
We still do. We're still a young country. We're just talking about a few generations.
Right.
All right? But I don't expect it to happen quickly because, these laws that were in place. I mean, when I was born, my mom couldn't vote. So we're only talking about a generation ago. A couple generations, there were still slaves, stuff like that. Separate water fountains and stuff like that. So we got some work to do. But your generation and the next are making sure that we do it. And I'm loving it. I'm seeing it, and I'm loving it. But it's scaring some people, and you can see them panicking.
Right. Well, it's interesting, like the kind of like put in a way of what we've talked about, like these words holding like vibrations, right? And you string a word, a collection of words together, we get a sentence. We get enough of a sentence, we get a phrase, and they kind of touch upon what you've talked about in the music lesson as phrases being phases and phases being phrases. It's a beautiful way that hope that we're going to a new phase from the phrases that we say, and that's going to affect how we think and how we interact with each other.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly. In the book, the spirit of music. If you remember, it was said that the phasers are now allowing themselves to be seen.
Oh, okay.
Okay, they used to not be seen. Now they're being seen. That's a desperate method. That's a desperate move. Right. Okay, we're going to show you who we really are. So there's a desperate thing there. But also, in the Spirit of Music book, you don't know if it never says who saw the phasers, except Ali, Victor, my character,
right,
Seiko, right? Maybe Jonathan, Michael. Only this group of people, the public that are playing in the street and all that stuff, we don't know if they really saw the phasers or not. So the phasers could be here. Only some see them. We don't know. So maybe only some of us are aware that the phasers even exist. Isn't that real life?
Right.
Right? Some people are just going about life like normal. But you can't be the hero unless you have some people. You can't be the leader unless you have people that follow. You can't be the great bass player, the great interviewer, unless there's people that are less than that. So we need some people to not see so that we can be the seers. So all of it on earth is a part of the whole puzzle. That's why the orchestra is so beautiful, because the instruments are different.
Right.
The orchestra is not just full of flute players. You got 50 flute players. No. You got violinists. You got second violinists. You got the same instrument playing different stuff. You got violas. It's like a violin, but lower. You got cellos. You got flutes. You got French horns. You got trombones. The orchestra is different. So music's got it right. We celebrate our differences. Not only do we celebrate the differences, we recognize you that you're different. You're a flute. Be a flute.
Right.
Don't try to be a bass player. Don't try to flute. You're not a snare drum. Be a flute. We recognize and celebrate who you are. So my brother Joseph always says, take what you know about music and use it when you're off the instrument. Right? Recognize someone who is and celebrate who she is.
Right.
Don't try to make them be like the bass player or whatever. Right? But we can still make beautiful music together. We'll make more beautiful music together if we recognize our differences.
That's well said. And it all comes together.
Music says it.
Yeah.
It's just what music does.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Or it's well heard. Maybe.
Thank you. That's you. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's to shift it in a you talk about attaching intent with music throughout both books and in some lectures and stuff, or at least some videos I've seen. With the idea of putting the spirit of music into that and kind of like communicating, like I heard something or I read something about one of the camps where you have an exercise to do such. I know this is a kind of a big twist from what we're talking about, but for some reason it made me think about that. It's what I'm trying to find a way to ask this without saying how do you do that, right?
Yeah.
Or how does one begin to find a way to put their intent musically and communicate with somebody like that? And is it like I don't know how to really phrase that other than, or maybe better yet, how did you come across the idea that can happen? As far as like,
because it can happen off of music. It's just like if you have a good friend, a spouse, or a parent or whatever, you know how they're feeling if they say good morning or whatever. They'll say good morning. That's the right words, but you might say, well, what's wrong?
Right.
They said it right, but you know that there's something behind it. In the same way, if a person has dirty hands, you don't want them cooking your food. Right? Because physical dirt can get into it. It's the same with mental dirt or mental medicine. Right? So in other words, when you think a thought, science knows that there's a vibration going on. You probably know that something vibrates even when you think. Right? They can measure, they can put things and tell that you're thinking, and they're studying musicians, what we're thinking. They can see the brain do stuff. That's vibration. Even light is a vibration.
Right.
Right? So when we think, can we agree that there's a vibration going on?
Definitely.
Yeah, so does that vibration stop right here at the skull?
Okay. All right.
Or does it keep going?
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. So there's a vibration if I have an intention, if I have a thought, if I have a feeling, if I have a tingle. It's a vibration. Can we see it? Maybe not. Can we measure it? Maybe not. A musical note is also a vibration. What do you think might happen if you put the two together?
Amplify it or cancel it out,
Bingo.
right?
Bingo. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, man, that's fascinating. I heard, I can't remember a bit or something I read or heard you talk about, and I was like, how does that work? And that's or not how does that work?
Yeah.
That's a fascinating, because that makes sense.
It does make sense. It's easier to see it and do it with words.
Right.
The same way you can, if you know a person well, you can tell if they're having a good day when you meet them, when you talk to them on the phone. You might call your mom, hopefully your mom is still alive. Mine isn't. Not in the physical, but she's still alive in my mind. But you can call your mom and just say hello. That's 2 syllables. And they can know a whole lot about you.
Right.
Hello, Mom. Oh, hi, son. What's wrong with you today? You got something? Tell me what's going on. They know everything because you grew in their belly. They've been feeling them vibrate.
Yeah.
The vibrations that made you grow are the daddy's vibrations and the mom's. And even more so the moms, because you live inside the mom for 9 full months,
right.
Almost a year from the inception of your physicality, of you becoming physical, is inside that mom. So that mom is so in tune, whether they're aware of it or not. Now, you get an aware mother or even an aware father, but the mother's been physically attached to you for 9 months. That's almost a year. Right?
Yeah.
Of life, not just learning to play an instrument or something for 9 months. I'm talking about growing, living. You go from nothing we can see to whatever, 8, 10 pounds, 6, 8, 10 pounds of physicality inside that mom. That mom knows so much about you. Right? And they feel you. Now, I had one of those moms. We could be anywhere in the world. She would know what's going on with us, especially if something was going wrong. So when I actually utter a physical word, now she knows more. You get a physical vibration with the mental that's already happening. It's the same thing we do with our music. Right? We make who we are physical, and we send it to people who receive it. It's different than just being in the same room. When you create that physical vibration, it's more powerful. We all understand if what I think, and the intent I put behind what I say matters. Well, I love you. Doesn't feel like you're telling me the truth. It's not just a word, You're walking down the street, you can tell if that person's into you or not. Oh, I might have a shot with this guy, this girl. There's so much that we know unspoken. Put what's unspoken into a physical vibration and send it to someone, whether you call it a note, a scale, a song, a lyric. It could just be a thought. It's a vibration. And like waves in the motion, soon as these 2 waves hit, they are changed, and you can't unchange them. Right? You look at 2 waves hit, neither wave stops. One wave doesn't hit the other and it just bounces back. No, they merge.
Right.
Right? And they're forever changed. So we're doing that 100% of the time.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Wow. Never thought of it like that.
I just want to be more aware of the vibrations I'm putting out there.
Right.
But you can't get them back. Can't get them back. So I want to do as best as possible to make sure that my vibrations have the right intent. How you receive them is up to you. Because I can say, hey, Dave, how you doing? Don't talk to me like that. That's up to you.
Right.
My intent's good.
That's fascinating.
I have no control over how it's received. I only have control over how I put it out. And however you put it out is not going to please everybody.
Right. Because sometimes they're going to have that dirt, that mental dirt in their own receivers.
And it may not be dirt. It may be more light than you.
Right. Or that cancels out.
And we thought we had the light, and we find out, oh, wait a minute. I need to change my view.
Right.
Because think about it, everybody thinks they're right.
Right.
But there are people who are more right, more enlightened. So we need to take our rightness with a grain of salt. Share it, It's like a light. There are light bulbs that are brighter.
Yeah. It's interesting with the comparison of a light bulb, right? You'd think eventually it grows dimmer, but a light bulb will burn bright. But that doesn't always equate to like experience, right? It's kind of the opposite. So I guess, but maybe the better thing to compare it to would be like a flame, right? It burns down to the coal, and the coal's hotter, even though it's not as flashy. And there's an equal amount. But I think I took another metaphor and fell into the one spot with it. But that's
I like it. But a light, like if I light a match in here, you don't see much light from it because it's already bright.
Oh, okay. All right.
So for this light to seem bright, it has to get dark.
Right.
So for many of us in life that are trying to grow our light, you can't see how brilliant you are in a room full of brilliance. It has to get dark around you. So a lot of us want to get better. We want to be the light, not realizing for our light to shine bright, it has to get dark. And so a lot of times we get on a course, we find a new religion, we find a new whatever, and then it gets dark around us. And we pay more attention to the darkness rather than realizing for me to be brilliant, it has to get dark. For me to shine this light, that's only the light as a match, for it to shine bright, it has to get dark. Right? Being brilliant around a bunch of brilliant people is easy. Playing music with good musicians is easy. If you want to be really great, you play with some musicians that aren't as great as you and make them sound good. So think about all of our heroes, whether it was, for me, Dr. Martin Luther King, whether I'm reading about Jesus, Buddha, or whatever, they didn't just hang with the best people.
Right.
They went to the depths of the worst and brought their light there. All right? They did both. Both. But in many cases, your light will shine the brightest in darkness. And at least with the Western religion of Christianity, that's how I see that light shining with Jesus in the Bible. And I look at it as we can argue over whether it's true or not. It doesn't matter to me because I wasn't there.
Right.
You weren't there.
Nope.
If I told you what I did today, you weren't there. You'll believe me because I said it. But to you, it's just a story. So it's up to you whether you believe it or not. So I take these Bibles, and I say Bibles plural because all the religions have them. I look at them as stories. What can I learn from them? And what I really learn is that the light needs darkness to be the light.
Right.
And all these people, Dr. Martin Luther King, he went to where it was needed. He went to the darkest places and helped them shine brighter. And his light, even though he's not here, is still bright. Jesus did the same thing. Buddha did the same thing. The Dalai Lama, who's in India right now, who had to escape Tibet, and he's still there, and he's still shining that bright light and making everybody better, even from afar. That's what it's about. All right? It's not just being bright in a bright place. It's bringing your brightness to help shine light on darker places.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a whole Hegel concept. I think it's Hegel, where like you're defined kind of by the people around you, right? And say if you take an Enlightenment idea, like you learn from all these scholars around you, you hang out with all the neuroscientists, and you know about how the brain works, and then you hang out with some musicians, and you're like, yo, the reason our brains expect this to happen is because you set up these expectations and these limits or whatever. So now you're this bright light bringing insight to Victor's book because you hung out with a bunch of scientists and you learned from them to shine it in a place. But that being said, like the Hegel thing is like the people around you are how you define yourself, or because they tell you you're that. Like you're a bass player, you're a musician, you're an Arthur, you know, the aardvark. But like it's because other people have said it. But putting into the concept with that, it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful because like it also makes me think of the Joe Strummer bit. Like without people, you're nothing. So if we didn't have any of those people to learn from or enlighten or even define who we are, without a mother, you're no one's son. Without a kid, you're no one's father, or without a coworker. It's a really fascinating way to put it.
Right. We need that context as humans.
Definitely.
We need it. To know who we are, we have to not even know, but we have who we aren't has to exist.
Definitely.
And that song, I've heard it called the original sin, but which is the gift of choice.
Huh.
If you want to choose anything, the opposite of your choice has to exist.
Right.
So choice is a gift and a curse.
Definitely. Definitely. Wow.
Right. And maybe what people call heaven is there's no more choices. It's just what it is. Everything's maybe what might call beautiful, but you can't call it beautiful because what's not beautiful has to exist at that point.
Yeah.
So we can't understand it on earth because we need what we call balance. You can't balance without two sides.
Right.
Right. I even talked about that in this new book. You know, we all want to be in the centered, but we live on the edge of the earth. You can't live in the center. You know?
Yeah.
So it's being able to know where you are and be in balance wherever you are. Right?
Right.
But to be in balance, you have to know both sides. Right? The person on the high wire has a long pole that really reaches way out here. Now they're in the center, but you know that they're aware of every end of the tip of that, and they're doing this the whole time with that pole. So they're manipulating the edges to maintain being centered. It's not ignoring the edges.
Right.
That's not what centered is. It's being totally aware of all of it. I exist here, but my mind is there.
Right.
You see?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not my mind is only here. If that guy on the high wire doesn't know what's going on here, he's going to fall. Yeah. So it's not that our heroes, Jesus, Buddha, Dalai Lama, is right here. They're here.
Right.
That's what centered is. Not ignoring that. Is being here and aware of both sides. That's balanced. That's centered.
Beautiful. Well, just like if you wanted to find the center of the circle, you got to find the perimeter, right? You got to be able to trace the whole thing. And
how do you know you're in the center if you don't know where the edges are?
Right, right.
Smart man. I like that. Yeah,
that's cool. I never thought of it like that, but that's man, I forgot what I was gonna. I had something that made me think of it. Now it escaped me, but it'll come back. It'll come back in the middle of something else. But the kind of like, I don't even know how the shift gears from that. But one thing, just as being kind of growing up in a family of musicians, and like it was kind of like not going to be not an option to have music in your life somehow. Like what I found fascinating about your story is you were opening for Curtis Mayfield at 5. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is a complete A-B turn, but this is just me. I forgot the thing I was going to compare that to, so I'm trying to cover it up. But I'll admit that mistake and commit to the bit. But like at that age, like music, like you talk about how music, when you like a child learning to talk, right? And if you encourage it, the child will learn to speak. And I find that so true. And I share that with so many of my students. And like, because everyone has this idea of perfection, right? And if you don't achieve it, because there's the cartoonish bit of the person not being able to sing and everyone being like, ooh, you know, I can't withstand you trying to figure out your violin. I got to walk away. But so much of it is like, oh, you got that. You got the 3 notes out of Smoke on the Water. You're getting, you're almost saying a full sentence. That's great. But so much of that isn't encouraged. To grow up in a family like that had to be, right?
That was all I knew. I didn't know how good it was until I was well an adult and started teaching people. You know, because, I mean, you know, you grew up speaking English, I can tell.
Yep.
But imagine if I'm from Japan, I say, wow, Dave, how did you learn? So what was your practice routine? You know, can you help me with my practice routine? How many hours a day? You'd be like, I just talked. My family talked. I talked. You know, that's how I learned to play music. I didn't have a practice routine, a schedule, a method. We just played. We jammed. If there was a song I had to learn, my brother taught it to me when I was that young. When I was about 9 or so, now I got to learn it myself. You know, but you start there with language. Nobody teaches you to talk. Not in the way we think of teaching. Sit down, lesson time, this time of day, go practice. Yeah. Didn't happen. You were jamming. You were in it from day one. You were jamming with the best pros. You never knew you were a beginner. No one ever treated you that way. You were never even corrected or told you were wrong. That's why you can speak freely now, because you didn't grow up in a way where, oh, I'm wrong if I mess up. I'm afraid of. That's music.
So when by age 5 to be playing for Curtis Mayfield, was that like, that seemed completely normal, right?
That's all I knew. Again, it's all I knew. I grew up before those Curtis Mayfield days. We would jam in the front yard. And then we would play for kids' parties. And then we were playing for weddings. Then we were playing at the officers' club. And all of a sudden people started hearing us. They started having us open concerts for big shows. Curtis Mayfield, War.
Wow.
Temptations, you know. And I mean, that was just what it was for me. I grew up in it, you know, and this was before I even started school.
Yeah.
So I look back on it now. And realize how special it was. But if you can speak English really well, or Japanese, or whatever your first language, if you can speak that really well at 5, no one calls you a genius.
Right.
It's normal.
Yeah.
It's just not normal to be that good at music at 5.
Right.
Unless you were in our family or any other family where they had, you know, the older siblings or the parents play music. Anytime I see a young kid that's really good, I just say, who else in your family plays? Oh, my big brother. Oh, my dad. Oh, my mom plays piano. That's all it takes is someone else doing it. Right. I had 4 older brothers that all played, and they needed a bass player. And so when I was born, that was me right away. So wow. in a sense, I was just lucky.
Yeah.
You know, I know spiritually, way behind the scenes, there's more than luck. But speaking, you know, in an earthly term, I was lucky to be born to those people. That's why I'm as good as I am. Not because I practiced a lot, or I just was born into it. The same way you're good at English. You wouldn't call yourself a prodigy at 5. You know, you could, if your family was singing, you could have gone and sang opening for whoever at 5. Big deal. I was just playing bass. Now, it's not normal. It's not normal. So it's considered, you know, wow or whatever. So I get that and I accept it. But when I look at what I was born into, it's obvious. And so I've just carried that forward. I still don't like to practice. But because you don't practice talking English. You interview people. You don't sit around and practice for hours,
Yeah,
like we practice music. You don't practice, A-E-I-O-U or,
sometimes
the alphabet. When's the last time you even said the alphabet, right? But we're still playing scales 50 years later, Play music.
It's interesting that so much of that routine makes it harder to. Like, it makes it harder to be musical because there's so much focus on the technique. And
well, we go back to our training.
Right.
Because our training is our habit. My habit was to play. Even with language, if you learn a new language, let's say, like I'm using Duolingo to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
If you take up a lesson, a language, and they teach you a new Spanish word, you don't go in a room and practice that word over and over. You use it in a sentence. They tell you to use it.
Right.
But in music, we tell you to go practice what I showed you. Don't use it yet. You got to get good at it first. But whether you can say adios properly or not, you're still using it in a sentence.
Right. It's put into context.
But in music,
saying something. Sorry.
That's the key. And even if you're saying it wrong, and if you're a baby calling it a baba rather than a bottle, as long as your parents know what they're talking about, you're good. And more than that, they're saying it wrong too. Here, Dave, here's your baba.
Yeah, they encourage it.
They encourage it because it's the meaning that's more important than getting the word right. They know the word will come. But in music, you mess up a C major scale by putting a C sharp in it, we got to stop right now. You got to go practice that scale some more. And then 30 years later or 15 years later, you realize if you're playing a C major, the note that Miles Davis is going to play is a C sharp.
It all comes back to that.
So now we're back to the C sharp again. Wait a minute. I remember that 15 years ago. You told me not to play it.
It is fascinating. We eventually learn the rules to break the rules. And how much more fun more fun breaking the rules can kind of be. I had a student this summer who I got this MIDI device thing. You can plug fruit into it, right? And then the fruit becomes the way to play. It's called Playtronica or something like that. And the kids love it. Like, oh, this avocado is a note now, and we would loop it and make beats. And one kid was like, can we use the peanut butter? And I'm like, oh, we can use the peanut butter. And I just made a bit with it. But that became so fun to say food wrong. It became a whole joke throughout the summer. Oh, peanut butter and jewelry. Like, it became playing again. And it's like reverting it. And that's fascinating. But I found that so motivating. It's so welcoming to think of it that way. And now when you're like at 5 and you've been playing for 5 years and like opening for the Temptations and stuff, and do they recognize that? Do you get some like working, like playing with these groups? Are they coming up and being like, are they seeing it as an anomaly? Or are they seeing it for like, wow, these guys embraced it, or like they grew up in this, or like what was kind of like?
Oh yeah, they recognized it. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, there was a time where Curtis Mayfield was going to discover the Wooten brothers. We were in the studio a while, and it wasn't really him; it was his management, his people. But yeah, I can barely remember being in the studio with some studio musicians and stuff, and I was 5, maybe 6. And but it finally just whatever fell through and didn't happen. And I was an adult when I realized, not realized, but I was an adult when I heard the story that my mom said, yeah, back then somebody said, there's already a group of 5 brothers living in California. We don't need another group of 5 brothers on the scene. The other group was the Jackson 5. So our whole 5-brother thing got shelved, which was a blessing in disguise.
Right.
Because sometimes, if you make it too young, your brain doesn't get a chance to really settle. You grow up as who you are in the eyes of who people think you are.
Right.
And our parents really weren't about that. Doesn't matter what people think of you, it's what you think of you. People have a choice of what they think of you. Now, because my career is dependent upon what you think of me, I want to know what you think. But you don't decide who I am. All right. Because to you, I'm a bass player. To me, I'm a human being. But if I want to sell records and put my kids through college through being a bassist, I need to know what you think. So I'm very aware of it. But who I live with is what I think of myself. That's what really matters first. So our parents were really into that, what we think of ourselves. And it's hard to get there if you're in the world view at a very early age, because that can change you and your parents. And that's what Britney Spears is going through that right now.
Yeah.
You know, with her parents. And it's hard to find someone who doesn't go through that when they're very, very famous, world famous, very young, whether they play sports, whether they're an actor, whether they're a musician or whatever. Things have the chance of changing. It can change for the good or for the bad, but it rarely doesn't change at all. Mm. But in the case, the best is for you to know who you are. And our parents made sure that we knew that first. And that we loved who we were. That was the key.
Yeah.
Gotta love you. But at the same time, our parents knew what we were facing. 5 black kids born in the 50s and 60s. It was a different America back then.
Right.
Different world. So they knew what we were facing. They knew that it was very possible, very probable that the world, the country we were living in would not support who we were as people. So we had to know who we were as people and support each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you know, us brothers, we're so supportive of each other. We never fought as kids. Parents wouldn't even let us argue. We could have disagreements, but we couldn't argue about it. Just try to prove you're right. Couldn't do that. But we all know who we are. We all love who we are. And then what you think about me, if you love me, that's a bonus.
It bounces back to the bit we talked about with the Bruce Lee thing, the self-knowledge, the knowing who you are. And that's beautiful that not only were you in an environment that nurtured like this creative outlet, but also the self outlet. Because for years, so many people are trying to find who they are, even, and just the come to that self-love and self-value. And like, I think maybe like having a musical outlet or a creative outlet, something that you can kind of put out there and measure it outside yourself more often than not, makes that easier to find that direction and start to develop that self-love. Like, I'm not a good painter, but I can paint a real good cat. You know, I'm a really good cat painter. You know what I mean? Like, there's ways to kind of justify it in that way, which may make it easier for some people to reach that on their own. But that's so beautiful that you grew up in that. In the studio, was that like kind of an alien environment? Like, I mean, I know I'm asking you to remember at 5, but like
I don't recall it that much. But there were other studio musicians and stuff. Yeah. I do remember this around that same era. I do know I was 5 for this. Us brothers and our parents are always there. We did go into the studio and record 2 songs that we made a 45 out of, 2 original songs.
Yeah.
And that was new for me. And I vividly remember that this particular studio, for some reason, we couldn't hear the bass when we recorded it. I could not hear myself. So I did have a little hollow body, looked like Paul McCartney's Hofner. Okay. But it was a Univox, but it looked just like that. So it's got a little bit of a hollow sound, a little acoustic sound. That was my original bass. So I'm hearing my brothers do these yellow earphones, yellow foam, which I can clearly see. But I couldn't hear the bass. But I had to play these 2 songs and record them. I didn't know that was supposed to be hard. No one ever said that. This is what I have to do, not play without hearing myself. I know these songs, so I do it. But I look back on it now and say, wow, at 5 years old, you recorded 2 songs without hearing yourself. That's special. But kids are resilient. They just do what you tell them. They just, you know. And so when kids grow up around brilliance, is what you were talking about, who you surround yourself with. That's why the kids learn to talk. That's why you learn to talk so fast. You surround yourself with the best. Right. If they weren't good at English, you wouldn't be. But you're speaking with the best. I was speaking with great musicians. Here's the real story. when I'm 2, this is the earliest I can remember Reggie really showing me stuff. I'm about 2 years old.
Yeah.
Reggie, and when I'm 2, Reggie was only 10. He's my oldest brother. He was only 10 when he was teaching me. So he's also teaching 5-year-old Joseph how to play keys. So think about this. I'm 2, 10-year-old Reggie's teaching me. By the time Reggie's 13, we're opening for Curtis Mayfield.
Wow. Yeah.
How many 10-year-olds do you know that have the know-how, the patience, the care, the empathy to teach their little brothers how to play that well, that fast, and put together a band with the 5 boys? That's the real story.
Yeah, I don't know many. I'm a teacher. I see a lot of 10-year-olds, and
Sure.
I know a lot of talented 10-year-olds, and that's for sure. But like that's a special one for sure.
Very special.
Wow.
So it's my brothers who are really special. I was just a product of them. I tell everybody that. Yeah.
Beautiful.
To make sure my wife wasn't calling. My wife's phone messed up today. So.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Was it well, a couple more questions. I really appreciate your time, man. We've been talking for a minute, and like just even this coming together, I'm like, man, I feel so bad bugging Victor, but man, that would be so awesome to pick your brain for a little bit. So I really, really appreciate this time. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it too, and you know, you bugged me in a kind way.
Thank you.
You know, and that, to me, that means this is somebody who really wants something, where it means something to you. And, you know, it didn't totally just seem self-serving. You know, you told me about some of the stuff that you're into and the, what do you call it? Like, music therapy and stuff. You know, you're not in music therapy for yourself.
Nope.
You know, so that means a lot. That means a lot. You know, so, it's rare I say yes to people the first time.
Thank you.
You know, you just want to see what it means to them. Plus, I get asked to do a lot of interviews. I really do.
I believe it.
And but many people are doing it just so that they can put my name on their roster.
Yeah.
They don't really care. They're not going to ask real good stuff like this. We're not really going to get anything. They just want to say, well, yeah, I interviewed this person too, and I interviewed this person too. I'm like, cool. I don't need to do another interview in my life. I'm happy to do them. I hope I get to do more, but I'm happy if they don't, you know? So I like it when it really does mean something to someone and they're kind about it.
Thank you. I was pretty nervous to keep pestering and like, I'm like, oh, because like, and I know I've pitched this in the initial, when I reached out, but I went to school for music therapy, and when I started playing music professionally, I was playing in nursing homes. I basically said yes to any gig, cause not just the income, but for more of experience and like learning how to be like water. How do you play music here? How does that work? And like that was fascinating to me, was just seeing how you can make the way I organize sounds and put them this way, make them work in different environments. And so that's where the music therapy aspect came in, and like, which is an awesome field, and like it has an extreme amount of well intent with it, and it's scientifically backed on a lot of things, and like, and a lot of it needs more, which is really cool. But out of reading all these texts and like if I pull up this book right here behind, hopefully I don't unplug my thing. This is, oh no, did I lose you? Man, I knew that would happen. I'm still here. Okay.
I'm here. All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
All right, I unplugged the thing. Like this big old book right here. This is a 900 page book on the.
What's that called?
It's called the Handbook of Music in the Brain. And it's by, I think, Daniel Livingston's. No, he's not in it. Tout's in it. Michael Tout. Okay. And like he developed this a neurologic music-based therapy where they have like they have regimented things they do, but it's how your brain interacts to like certain things, like just sound input, vibrations, and like, And they develop these techniques that are standard, and this is all that goes into it, and it's really well thought out and fascinating. But the book that really made me think and rationalize all this stuff, as well as playing music and being expressive and teaching music, which I fell into, was The Lesson. And like that being kind of the intent of the book, but that made me rationalize that big book I just showed you way more, and like just because, and I go back to it every couple years and reread it. And I find some of that so fascinating. And the reason I wanted to ask about intent was last year I was rereading it, and the whole concept of zero, which is fascinating, right? I teach pre-K to senior high, right? And my third graders, so like they're super witty, right? And like I don't say anything about, what I'm reading, or, they don't have interest with that, but I came in there one day, and one student looks up. He's like, 0. It was almost like from the book. Like, he's like, 0 is not a number. Like, whoa, I didn't even say anything about it. He's like, it's crazy. It's something and nothing. And he goes up on the board and starts ranting. And like, I was like, that's so profound. And I just read that part in this book. And then I shared it with him, and it became a moment we shared. But like, I had no intention on bringing that up. And it's just to kind of go like that. Intent being transferred is profound. I don't know if that was it, or if he just had to say that, but it did.
That's
so
cool.
I really appreciate your time. All this being said, but one thing I wanted to kind of pick your brain about was a little bit before we split. You're working on a concerto for The Lesson.
No, I wrote it already.
Okay.
It's for the. I took the song "The Lesson," which is written a measure at a time in the book, The Music Lesson, but I wrote a concerto based on the song "The Lesson," where I stretched it out into 3 movements for electric bass and orchestra, and it's called "The Lesson 3."
Okay.
But I titled it in Spanish, "La Lección 3." I gave it a Spanish title, The Lesson 3, but in Spanish.
Okay.
And I performed it with one orchestra. I'll be performing it in October, if all goes well, with the Boston Symphony. So that should be fun.
Wow. And is it, I think I heard somewhere you were recording it, or like it was a video recording?
I will record it. If all goes as planned, I will record it, but not yet. I want to record, I want to play it at least, maybe after the Boston, I'll start recording. This is the second concerto that I've written, but the first one I co-wrote it with a woman named Connie Ellisor, a wonderful violinist from Nashville. We co-wrote it, and one of the orchestras, I think we performed it with 5 different orchestras. It's called the Bass Whisperer,
cool.
Concerto for Electric Bass and Orchestra.
Yeah.
And so one of the 5 orchestras we did it with asked for another one for their 2020 season. And so I decided, I do want to write another one, but I want to write it myself, completely myself. And instead of starting from scratch, I started from the song "The Lesson."
Okay.
And took that lesson and then branched out. So in the second movement, you hear that song branched out, but then the first movement is leading up to the song. The last movement kind of takes it further. You don't even really hear the song, but if you listen closely, there are elements from it, and it branches into a new piece. So I started from there and wrote out like this.
Okay.
And it's kind of cool.
That sounds awesome.
But the 2020 season didn't happen because of COVID.
Right.
So then we recorded it. We finally recorded I think it was this year. So yeah, sometime this year we recorded a video performance. I went up to Chicago. And I've been dealing with a weird hand issue, so my performance wasn't great. It was hard to play for me. But we got it recorded, so I got to work on it again now and try to get a better performance in Boston in October.
Okay. How is your health with your hand? I heard you mention it in some other interview, but I can't remember what it was called.
It's called dystonia.
Dystonia.
Dystonia. So like dystonia.
Right. Okay.
And to be exact, focal dystonia. Focal just meaning in one location. For me, it's just my fingers.
In both hands?
It's the weirdest thing. Say it again?
In both hands?
Both hands, yeah.
Wow.
More so my left, but a little bit in my right. The weirdest thing, my hands are fine. Right? They move fine, no pain, no sluggishness.
Yeah.
But if I pick up a bass, these three fingers curl into a ball. So for whatever reason, there's something in the brain that is telling these fingers when I play, right? When I go to play, see what these fingers just did? It's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you can see these fingers better. They want to do curl. So to get them to do what they're supposed to do is difficult. Right? They're trying to do that.
Right.
But only when I play.
Huh. Weird.
That's the weird thing about dystonia.
Right.
It just affects, most of the time, it affects you only when you're doing the task that it is you want to do.
Huh.
Like I have a friend who has dystonia in his throat, but it only affects him when he talks. Fortunately, not when he sings. Right? So dystonia, golfers will get it. They have a name for it. I forget they call it not the crip, something where golfers lose their swing. Right? They could, without a golf club, probably do that.
Do the motion.
It's the weirdest thing. So it's it's not so much physical. It's a weird disconnect with the hands.
Right.
Like I met a young woman at Berkeley, plays violin, and her index finger just stayed bent like that. So she couldn't play with that finger. Play with three fingers. And one day she was out with some girlfriend and she put a ring on her finger and she was looking at the ring and her finger straightened. She was like, what? And she wiggled. She had total control. Took the ring off and that finger bent again.
Wow.
Weirdest thing ever.
Right.
She called me and told me about it, and I had her send me a video. And so then I go up to Berkeley every month in Boston at the music college, and she was playing again, normal. But she had to keep the ring on her finger. She could play. But after a few months, it was like the brain figured out that it was being tricked because it wasn't a cure. So whatever is triggering it in the brain is still there. Sort of like a small trauma or something that has triggered an incorrect part of the body, like a bad habit. So I've been working with a woman from Spain to reprogram my fingers, and I've gotten better slowly.
Yeah?
I used to not even be able to talk about it and do this. Because if I thought of bass, these fingers would curl.
Weird.
So
wow.
It used to be as I brought my hand up, these fingers would curl. And I really couldn't do this, like show you fingerings on but my fingers are still trying to curl a little, but it's better. So it's getting there.
That's amazing. It is amazing. It's amazing on both ends. Now, what are you doing to like retrain that thought process? Because it sounds like when you sing, you use one part of your brain compared to when you talk. So it sounds like it's a connection thing somehow.
Absolutely.
Is that why you're learning Spanish? Is there maybe thinking?
It's not why. I've just been wanting to learn that since I was a kid. Maybe hopefully it'll help. Maybe that's what's helping.
Maybe it could be like thinking of it in a different language.
You're absolutely right. That could be. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but the training, the what's the word? The therapy or whatever that I'm going through with this woman from Spain. My wife found her online. Her name is Ruth Childs, Chiles, for anyone that ever hears this and is dealing with dystonia. I urge you to look up Ruth Childs in Spain. Her treatment is so out of the box and different that it drew me to it, drew my wife to it. She said, Victor, go check out this woman. And she's different, like where basically her stuff is brain stuff. It's what I'm thinking, where my eyes are looking. If I say, hey, remember that time we first met back in 1980? You'll go, right. You'll look at a certain place. She's looking at, science is starting to prove, even Dan Levitin told me that science is starting to show that the eyes have a play in where we place memories in our brains.
Okay.
And maybe that, because they say scientists for years never knew why we sleep. Why waste that much time?
Right.
Of our day? But the brain places memories. We don't remember anything until we stop doing it. This is what Dan Levitin told me. So when you're practicing, you have to stop for your brain to solidify it and remember it. Then, so practicing for hours, as he says, is not as good as practicing for 20 minutes and stopping. Take a break. Let the brain memorize it. So it's possible that the brain, that rapid eye movement, is the eyes or the putting memories. Right?
Okay, yeah.
It's like you can't remember being at Disney World while you're there.
Right.
Right? You got to leave. Then you can remember it. That's my poor man's version of that smart guy stuff that Dan talked about. But so she has me doing a lot of brain things, and some of it has to do with what they call brain spotting, which is where my eyes look. Because we have found that if I focus on a certain place, it gets worse. If I focus on another place, it gets better.
What's that spot? So if you're watching your hand, does it get worse?
Washing my hands definitely gets worse.
Okay.
And there's other places where I look, and not just where I'm looking, but am I focused here or am I focused way over there? Same area, but focus, all of that. And it's interesting what she has me do. What she has me do, different brain things of sometimes not trying to make it go away. Once the dystonia comes in and my finger locks, it doesn't lock, but sometimes I'm trying to not have my fingers curl, but it just does that. In many cases, she doesn't say, like, shake it out, make it go away. No, stay with it. What does it feel like? And I've realized, I feel it in my mouth, my forehead. I feel it in my back. Like we talk about the tingle. I've learned to feel that.
Yeah.
I can feel that. And so she has me stay with it and feel it and feel it. Just stay with it and let the brain make it go away. Instead of making it go away consciously, let that part of the brain that's causing it dissolve it. Right? It's almost like being angry. Okay, be angry. Keep being angry. Keep being angry. It'll go away.
Right. Yeah. That's fast.
So she has me do that with the dystonia. It's pretty interesting.
Wow. That's okay. Wow. Because understanding what that is, I've heard people do that with like how you're saying with being angry. Why are you angry? Where are you angry? And if you can feel that starting to come on, you can redirect that before you have that rage outbreak or whatever. Well, I'm super happy to hear that you're finding something that's working. That's amazing. Yeah.
It's slower than I would hoped, but it is working.
Was it another kind of off-topic question that I was going to throw before a while ago was you have this, you deliver this, you have this really good way of showing or telling students they have a thing that anyone has. It's how you deliver it. And I found that fascinating, with music, in the sense of you can be a profound punk musician and jazz musician, and your vocabulary of music is completely different, but what is there can be presented and respected in the same way. And you credited your brother Reggie for teaching you how to do that on stage with certain things. And he would have you try things on stage just to see how they went?
Absolutely. He still does that. He comes up with ideas and he gives them to me.
What's been the craziest idea that he suggested to you? One that worked and maybe one that didn't work?
Well, they all work. One is all of them work. One that's really crazy is we grew up big fans of James Brown. James Brown, for me, by far the best performer I've ever seen. Just amazing. James Brown, he's singing on a microphone stand, but he'd have the microphone cable taped, attached to the stand some kind of way, so he could throw the stand in a way and hang on to the mic wire and make the stand almost fall, but pull it back up and dance, So Reggie said, man, if you did that with your bass. I was like, what are you talking about? Some kind of way, hook up the cord. So I had Fodera make a bass where the cord doesn't plug in. It's just attached. It's built inside the bass. But the cord runs up the back of the bass, up the top of the neck, and comes out the top. So I could be playing the bass, take it off, and throw it across the stage, let the cord go through my hand, and then pull it back and spin it around and yank it up and catch it and play it and stuff. Very, very cool stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So that was a Reggie idea. Spinning my bass was a Reggie idea.
Yeah?
Just spinning my bass. I got that from Reggie.
That's a more controlled version of the bass on the leash.
Exactly. Here's something for you. Let me see if while I've got this. See if you can see this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you see what that is?
Yeah, the rocks.
Yeah, it's a pile of rocks. So let's see. Let's see if this works. Let's see. And that is another pile of rocks.
Yeah.
This is a lesson that I put into a PowerPoint that I'm just showing you the photos.
Yeah,
Normally all those words aren't there yet. But that's a pile of rocks also. Right. But that one's organized. There's a presentation there.
Yeah.
The individual rocks aren't any more beautiful than the first pile, but it's how you present it.
Right.
Right? So you don't even really have to have a whole lot of talent or skill.
Right.
The whole pop world understands this.
Yeah.
Your presentation can be so powerful that you don't even realize that every individual rock's not that beautiful.
But yeah, it's put together in a beautiful way. Right.
So presentation is powerful. And this is what I believe the jazz music of today is really missing.
Yeah.
They've got the gift, the skill, but the presentation is boring. And we lose our audience.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
There's no presentation. They don't smile, look too serious. Take a solo, trumpet player takes a great solo, the audience is applauding, but the trumpet player doesn't say thank you. They just walk off the stage as if the audience isn't there.
Yeah.
And it's mostly because, I think it's mostly because that's what they thought Miles Davis was doing.
Right.
That's what they thought Coltrane, Charlie Parker was doing. So we're trying to still do that. But our audiences are hurting because they want to be entertained. You can listen to good music at home. So why am I going to pay my hard-earned money to come see you? I want entertainment. And it doesn't mean you got to be dancing around, but you need to present like that pile of rocks.
Like that pile of rocks. Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful way to show it too, because it's simple, and even music is that itself, right? Sounds, and then when you organize them, these pitches happen in this time. Now it's a song. Before it was just annoying, maybe. Wow. Awesome. Yeah. One kind of a final question. So your wife, she does acting, right? She does but acting in a specific way where it's like for doctors, right?
Well, that's what she's currently doing.
Okay.
She just grew up in acting the same way I grew up in music.
Okay.
But she loved musical theater, so she sang a lot, dancing lessons, did a lot of plays and shows. Her main goal was to be on Broadway. Okay. That kind of thing. So, but now, after we've had 4 kids, our kids are getting older, she's finding her own time again. She found about the job that's doing that, where they act like patients or they act like nurses and they do scenarios, but the whole thing is to train new doctors. Right. So that the doctors don't have to wait until it's the real time to practice having a baby or deliver a baby or to inject you with medicine. You don't want them practicing on you. So they have dummies that you can inject and take blood from, the mannequins that you can do babies, or my wife will have a migraine, or she'll have an intestinal gallbladder or whatever, and she knows my wife knows what it's supposed to feel like. So when the doctor touches in a certain place, she knows when and where and how to scream. So it's fun for her. She loves it. Because it's like learning new roles again every day.
So, like, were you introduced to like some acting techniques throughout like writing these books, like the Meisner thing of accompanying, and like, or was maybe like something like that? Do you see that within like stage performers as kind of where I was going to go with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe every musician should take at least a year of acting exercise, acting class. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, because there's no actor that looks down at the ground when they're acting unless it's a part of their role. But most guitarists will look at their hands when they're playing. And the same way, if we were in front of each other but we didn't look at each other when we talked, that would be so awkward.
Right.
A person who doesn't look at you is usually withdrawn and talking kind of like weak and soft.
Yeah.
A lot of people play this way. You can do this with your kids, probably. I've never done it with a real young kid. I've done it with some, but you can look at a difference of a person who's playing, looking at their hands versus looking up. You'll hear the difference.
Yeah. Oh, you know what?
So,
that's fascinating. I had Pete Francis. He's a singer-songwriter. He played in the band Dispatch, big indie band. But he did a songwriting lesson with my students, and he did this thing where he's like, get this list of things, and one of the lists on the list for every student was a pair of sunglasses. And this is making me think about what you just said. He would have the students one at a time when we did the lesson. He's like, say let's rock, and they'd be like, let's rock, and he's like, now put on the sunglasses, say let's rock, and they'd be like, let's rock. Like there was a little something to it. And his whole point was we can put on these roles whenever we need. And that's fast. Okay, beautiful.
I like that, the sunglasses. I want to try that.
All right, that's from Pete Francis. He'd be stoked because when I did a chat with him and we were talking about your book, and this is cool.
Yeah,
because it's a very physical thing. You can remove it, but and yeah, I imagine even someone like Bootsy's like that. I imagine he's not the same guy with the glasses off.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
Victor, thank you so much for talking with me, and what you were saying. Like, I really appreciate that you saw the honesty in my story, and like that we got to do this. This means a lot, and
it means a lot to me. I appreciate it.
So thank you very much. Is there any like thing else you're thinking about like writing down the line? Is there any other novels? Yeah. The next book that I'm currently working on is a book on the things that us brothers heard our parents say to us all the time, over and over, quotes. So it'll be a small coffee. It won't be a big novel. It'll just be a small little coffee table book. Yeah. Where it'll have one of Mom's or Dad's quotes, and then us brothers will describe what it meant to us. That's amazing. That's because if those are the ones that made through lines within some of these books now, that's going to be the source material. That's Absolutely. Exciting. Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome, Victor. Well, thank you so much, my friend. I really, really appreciate this.
You're welcome. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for speaking with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me know, if you do anything with this, let me know where it is so I can take care now.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Right. Is your mind still there? Did it get blown? That's the sound of me learning. That's the sound of me trying to comprehend a lot of stuff. Victor's a wise man. We're lucky to have him around. It was a pleasure and an honor to have that conversation with Victor. If there's any podcast I have that should be revisited more than once, it's this one. Victor's new book, The Spirit of Music, out, available. You get it off his website. Soon the audiobook will be there if it's not out already, which is going to be fantastic. One thing I didn't get to plug at the top of the podcast was this podcast is mixed by Studio 44 CLE at Studio 44 CLE Cleveland. Jay Sparrow will make all your stuff sound good, so reach out to him for all your audio needs. And as well, if you can follow, like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast and all the podcast platforms. It helps me keep talking to amazing people like Victor and sharing those insights with you. So I'll catch you on the next one. Kevin Eastman returns.